This is the Savvy Investor radio show and podcast. For help with your retirement, schedule a 15-minute phone conversation with the team at ProStatus Financial Advisors today. Just call 866-597-1040 and at thesavvyinvestorradio.com.
Welcome back to the Savvy Investor radio show and podcast with the team at ProStatus Financial. Katherine Groce here. Lawrence Kiely is here. My name is Randy Cook, and we talk about retirement here each and every week here on the show. And many of us are saving in 401ks, and we thought it was a great idea in the 80s when they kind of introduced it. I remember being right there, Katherine, because I was in a job where there was no pension. So then I thought, oh, they're going to give me this thing that I can control, that I can put money into, I can make my decisions, and I can say when I want to take this money out. Seemed like a great idea. And now we are all in our 60s and 70s, and we see there's a little downside to this. Trying to get that money out. I got a story for you. This is a 73-year-old man who is taking his very first RMD, his very first required minimum distribution. He has $3 million, so he's been a really good saver. Well, here's what happened to him. The amount that he had to take out was $120,000. That put him into a higher tax bracket. That put him in the area of 85% of his Social Security tax. It also put him over the IRMA line. All in all, his tax bill was $42,000 more. So now he's paying $160,000 on his first RMD, and he's like going, what happened here? All right.
That's that tax avalanche.
There you go. There you go. So not all of us are going to have $3 million. Wham, wham, wham for this guy, right? Okay. But many of us, Katherine, are going to have the bulk of our money in a 401k. And they talk about this idea of a conversion and trying to get out of the tax wash. Is that the answer? What is the runway to get us out of this? How long does it take? How complicated is it? Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. I mean, again, it all comes down to your specific situation, what your income needs are in retirement, how much your income is, et cetera, et cetera. But it's basically a formula that, Lawrence and I and the team know very well, that we look at, what does it look like if we do nothing? In this guy's case, now he's faced with this larger tax bill. Mm-hmm. Or what does it look like if we strategically do some tax planning along the way? So again, it's looking at, where's your sources of income coming from? And you said something earlier about, being excited about 401ks because you could basically create your pension. You're kind of in charge of it. Mm-hmm. It's almost better for us to do tax planning when you don't have a pension, because that allows us to get you tax-free quicker. It also allows us, to basically control which bucket of money that's coming from, because everywhere pensions are taxable. Some states give some exclusions on pensions, and some states don't tax pension income at all. But in general, on the federal side, you're paying tax on that pension regardless. Mm-hmm. So with the 401k having pre-tax dollars, if you do nothing, you're going to pay tax on that money regardless. So what if we could take pieces of that money, a little bit at a time? Sometimes we do it over 5 years. Sometimes we do it over 10 years. Sometimes we do it over 15 years,
wow,
depending on what that runway is for retirement. Mm-hmm. And how much wiggle room you have in the tax bracket. And not only the tax bracket is different than the IRMA bracket, so that's a different formula. Mm-hmm. So again, there's all different things that come into that. And so again, it comes down to sitting down with somebody, going through the numbers. It's funny. I even had a client I met with recently say that we ask for a lot of information. The reason we ask for a lot of information is because we're basically doing a full physical exam of your retirement. We want to know all the bits and pieces, where your income's coming from, whether you have dividend producing stocks, whether you have rental income. All of that comes into play into these equations. It's not a one size fits all plan.
So, Lawrence, when I look at this, last week on the show, we were talking a little bit about the idea of, how much income do you take and how do you balance all of this stuff out. There was an article out there that said what you should do in your 60s, your late 60s, is you should figure out what your RMD will be at age 75 and take that money out as you get there. So spend that money. And then once you get to RMD age, it's not going to be that big a bite. And that way you're already used to taking, $30,000, $40,000 out a year. So then when you get to RMDs, it'll be the same. Does that work? I don't know. Does that math work?
That's interesting math. I don't know if that math in particular works. What you're doing in that sense or in that scenario is you're drawing down the IRA earlier in retirement so that it's not as big of a hit later on at RMD
Right.
age or your required minimum distribution age, and you're used to taking those distributions. But the question then becomes is, again, it goes back to income. Do you need that money? Because if you're drawing it down, you're probably reinvesting that money somewhere, whether you're putting it into a savings account and it's accruing interest, or you're putting it in an individual brokerage account and now you're investing in the stock market or ETFs and now you're dealing with capital gains. So you're paying taxes on money and then you're investing it in a way that's creating potentially more taxes for you.
Yeah.
So really the alternative to that, and it's why we gather all this information and construct a creative or a custom plan for your very specific situation and a full financial plan that includes tax strategizing, is that we want to come up with a strategy that's taking that money and putting it in a tax-free vehicle for growth. So that's where Roth conversions come in, because if you don't actually need that money for income purposes, instead of just drawing down that, let's draw it down in a strategic way to where, okay, we're paying the taxes out of it, we're withholding taxes on your conversion, and now we're putting that money into a Roth IRA, right? So now that balance, that principal balance is tax-free, and all the growth that you're seeing, all the investment growth, interest, all that is tax-free as well. So it's really being strategic about how do we get that money into a tax-free bucket of money so the growth is tax-free and that principal balance is tax-free right now. But again, doing it in a very strategic way to where we're controlling the taxes as much as we can so there's no surprises. And again, the goal with that is the earlier you do it, the better off you're going to be in the long run, right? And a lot of times people have this argument, well, I'm in my high earning years, I'm making a lot of money at work, when I retire, I'm going to be in a lower tax bracket. Yes, but that's why you meet with us, right? Because it's a balancing act of we're trying to keep you in the same tax bracket. We'll convert a little bit less while you're working, and then we'll get more aggressive as you retire. But the goal, again, is how can we create this tax-free bucket of money and portfolio for you in retirement so that you're tax efficient and you're not dealing with this tax snowball later on in life, but you're dealing with it now.
And you know what the current tax brackets and legislation is when you're doing it now. We don't know what that's going to be in the future. I mean, they made the Trump tax cuts permanent, but to me, that's just permanent through to whoever next gets in office and wants to make the next tax legislation permanent. So again, while doing it while you know what the tax legislation is also helps you from the unknown of the future that you're planning for, because no tax is better then we don't know what the tax rate's going to be.
Yeah, I looked at that article and it basically said, take your RMD out when you're, 65, 66, 67, like that, and then you'll be all set by the time you get to RMD. So I did the math on that and I looked at my wife and I said, okay, your job over the next 7 years is to spend $300,000. Can you do it? Her eyes got really big. She really liked the idea.
Now, honestly, for people that need that income, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That makes sense. But then there's other people, like Lauren said, that doesn't need the income. So then we can be kind of strategic and creative with other things. We have clients that are charitable minded. So once they become RMD age, we can do things called qualified charitable distributions. Matter of fact, the company we work for actually allows issuing of checkbooks from your IRA, where you can actually write checks from your brokerage IRA account to direct charities. So if you go to church, you pay, you give money to the church every week. If there's certain organizations you like to donate to annually, you basically just stroke a check from that IRA. It goes directly to the charity, and it deducts that income, which would have otherwise been taxable, off your tax return. And then also with converting, if people are charitable minded and depending on what bracket they are in retirement, you don't necessarily need to convert it all. It's not an all or none type of situation. For most people, if we can get the IRA balance down to $250,000, $300,000, then basically the RMD there is not enough to put you into the next tax bracket. Or if you're doing qualified charitable distributions, say of like $10,000, $20,000 a year, because most people can't itemize anymore because the standard deduction is so high. So they're using qualified charitable distributions instead of regular cash charitable distributions that would have otherwise been deducted on a Schedule A. They use that RMD money on that $250,000, $300,000 to go to the charity, and they're still doing the same charity contributions just from a different source that's more tax efficient for them. Another thing I want to point out too is other repurposing kind of RMDs. I have clients that take out their RMDs and pay the tax and put it in their grandkids' 529 plans. That's another way to repurpose some of that money. Another thing that we utilize in addition to Roth when we talk about buckets of money, the other kind of type of account that grows tax-free and produces income tax-free is cash value life insurance. So like an index universal life policy, we call that using life insurance as a financial tool. So that's another thing that we look at. Does life insurance make sense for you? That we can grow that cash value for you tax-free to use during your retirement, goes to your kids tax-free. And then if they're good stewards of their money, then that money goes to your grandkids tax-free, which they basically took away that multi-generational IRA inheritance with the Secure Act, where they changed how you inherit your parents' money. So it used to be that you inherited your parents' money, IRA money, usually when you're in the highest earning years of your career, and then you had to take, a required distribution from that every year over your lifetime. And as long as you kind of taken the, just the required distribution, then that money lasted over your lifetime and then go into your kid's lifetime. But they've changed that rule now. You have to take all that money out within 10 years. Yeah. It comes down to what your goals are in retirement, whether you want a legacy, you're charitable minded, what your income is going to be in retirement, and then sitting down with someone like Lawrence, myself, and the team that's going to walk through the important goals for you in retirement, how we can create those buckets, and which bucket's going to basically fund all these goals for you in the most tax efficient way possible.
Lawrence, I have heard this many times that people will get to RMD age, 73 or 75, whatever it is for you, and they've done a great job of saving. They've done a great job of developing income, and now they've got pretty much everything they need, and then all of a sudden, now there's another $30,000, $40,000 or more that they need to take, and they're going to get hammered on taxes. And one of the things that people will look at is that big question of what am I going to do about long-term care? Is some of that money can be put into some kind of a policy, some kind of an account, some kind of a protection that will help them if, in fact, that takes place. Is that something that some of the people that you work with entertain?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. And again, it goes back to what Catherine had mentioned a little bit, was repurposing those dollars, right? So part of our financial planning process is going through the different financial planning that retirees deal with, and having a conversation around life insurance, long-term care is one of those conversations that we sit down and talk about with our clients. And whether you decide to self-fund or hedge against it and use some type of policy, that's the discussion we have. But our job as fiduciaries is to show you the pros and cons and have those discussions with you. And one of those things is, yes, using a long-term care policy. And it's not that we use traditional long-term care. I don't think out of all the conversations we've had, we've actually ever sold a traditional long-term care policy, but there's alternatives to that are more beneficial and have more bells and whistles for clients. And one of those is using an IUL or an index universal life policy, like Catherine had mentioned, that has a long-term care benefit to it. Mm-hmm. So you have, it's creating multiple avenues, right, for you, to where it has, we call it a Swiss Army knife, right, where it has cash value growth. So it has tax-free growth to it in the cash value, so that if you don't actually end up using long-term care, you're not just putting money into something for no reason. But then it has that death benefit as well that you can use to pay for long-term care. So it's a way to utilize those funds that you don't otherwise need, making them tax efficient, but then also creating that added benefit of potential long-term care need.
Yeah, I think that many of us are kind of shrugging our shoulders going, okay, well, if this happens to me, what am I going to do? Because, boy, I've heard it's really expensive. And it is. And to think that you could use your RMD money to give yourself some kind of an account, some kind of protection against that big cost that could happen to you later in life is certainly something to explore. Give the team a call. Give the team a look on the website. Again, it is the SavvyInvestorRadio.com, the SavvyInvestorRadio.com, or 866-597-1040. It's a no-cost, no-obligation look at you, your retirement, what you've done to save, what could be in the future for you, what your income looks like. Let's really get down to doing the math on your retirement. 866-597-1040 or the SavvyInvestorRadio.com. Well, that is all the time that we have on the Savvy Investor Radio Show and podcast. Lawrence, I'll give you the last word on this one.
This is Lawrence Kiely, and thank you for listening to the Savvy Investor Radio Show and podcast.
And I'm Katherine Groce. We'll see you, the Savvy Investor, next week.
Advisory services offered through ProStatus Financial Advisors Group, a registered investment advisor. Insurance licensed in Maryland. ProStatus Financial Advisors Group LLC is not licensed in all 50 states. To find out if ProStatus Financial Advisors Group is licensed in your state, please call 410-863-1040. ProStatus Group LLC is not affiliated with nor endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any other government agency and does not provide legal or tax advice. Annuity guarantees rely solely on the financial strength and claims-paying ability of the issuing insurance company. By contacting us, you may be provided with information about insurance and annuity products offered through representatives of ProStatus Financial Advisors Group.